some people, the word humility is a dirty word. Because for some people, they don't understand humility, or they really just think they have all the answers, they're better than anyone else, and that's a pretty serious claim to have for yourself. I'd like to talk about the true sense of humility. Humility is knowing you don't have all the answers and that you need other people. Humility isn't saying, I'm no good, I'm a failure, I'm lousy, etc. I mean, that's kind of a false humility. Sometimes it means that we're kind of fishing for a compliment. If we say, how bad we are, we're hoping someone will say, no, you're not, you're really nice, and so on. But humility is saying, yes, there are other people. So there are two groups in the readings today that really lacked humility. The one were the Jewish people with Ezekiel. In the first reading, Ezekiel was rejected by his own Jewish people. The background of that reading is that the Jewish people had been taken captive to Babylon. And naturally they were upset. They thought God had abandoned them, that God didn't believe in them or didn't love them anymore, and they didn't believe in God. And Ezekiel, one of their own, arose as a prophet among them and said, no, God has told me that God cares about you, and God will bring you back to Israel. And they just couldn't believe that one of their own, had a hot link to God, as it were. So they rejected him, as they did most of the prophets. And then in the gospel, Jesus has the same thing. He goes back to his hometown of Nazareth. Now you'd think when he went back there, there'd be a ticker tape parade. It would be a national holiday. The Messiah has come back home where he grew up. But they lacked humility, or they were jealous or ignorant. I'm not sure what the problem was. They'd heard about his miracles, surely, and yet they said, get out of here. In fact, one account says that when he started saying all these wonderful things, they tried to kill him. They took him to the edge of the town of Nazareth and were going to throw him off the hill. And I've seen that hill. I've been to Nazareth, and I've seen that hill. That would have killed anybody, but he just turned around and walked through the crowd. Imagine treating the Son of God like that. Well, of course, they didn't believe he was the Son of God. Now, I find that little part interesting. He didn't do any mighty deeds there, apart from curing a few sick people by laying his hands on them. And to me, that's a pretty big deal. The few sick people he did cure. So, humility. And sometimes, perhaps, we felt that rejection by some of our own people. It's very difficult within your own family, to your spouse, to your children, to your siblings, to correct them. Sometimes it backfires. I've been involved in a few situations, where family members have gotten together and tried to, tell a person that they need help. And usually it's because of their alcoholism or using drugs, whatever. And, you say, we have everything ready for you, you're going to rehab. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. They don't like being told by someone that close. I remember shortly after I was ordained 50 years ago, I went back to my home parish of St. Bridget's. I grew up in St. Bridget's, was an altar boy there, confirmed there. And this woman looks at me and she says, Billy Kenny? She said, I can't believe you are a priest. She was the head of altar boys, and I must have given her a few headaches when I was an altar boy there, but I said, yes, I am, So it is difficult at times to be a prophet among your own people, but don't give up. One incident I'd like to talk about is don't be afraid to listen to people who are different than you. They just might have some wisdom that you're not counting on. One particular group are your children. Now, I know the fourth commandment says honor your parents. I think there should be a 4B, honor your children. Respect them. Yes, you're the adults in the house. They're the minors. You have to establish rules. You have to give them discipline. I'm not saying let them run wild. But they're human beings. They have their own thoughts, especially the older they get. You may have to agree to disagree. They may have different ideas than you on how to live their spiritual lives, on politics, on career choices, college choices, whatever. Respect your children. Respect them. And respect other people. You know, that's what prejudice is all about. Prejudice saying is, I'm in a group that's better than your group. And therefore, can anything good come from you because we're better, because of our skin color or the accent of our voice or our ethnic origin or our sexual orientation or whatever it might be. We've placed ourselves on a pedestal and everyone else is below us. What could they ever tell us? Remember, one of the critics early on in the gospel says, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Well, yeah, like God. Yeah. So be careful how you judge people and what they can tell you. Everyone, I think, has a story. Everyone has a history. And everyone has good in them. I truly believe that. Open your eyes. More importantly, open your hearts. But I'd like to talk about the second reading. It has one of my favorite passages about Paul the Apostle. It was in the first line, so maybe you missed it. Paul said, I have a thorn in my flesh that bothers me, irritates me. I've asked God to take it away, but God did not. Now, Scripture scholars have debated for 2,000 years, what is that thorn in Paul's flesh? Was it literal? I don't mean a thorn from a rose bush, but was it physical pain? Did he have arthritis? Did he have diabetes? I don't know. But many scholars say, no, it wasn't a physical ailing. It was his ego. His ego got in the way. Now, that was why he was able to accomplish so many successful missionary trips, because he pushed forward. And if you didn't like his pace, you left him. In the Acts of the Apostles and his letters, it says Barnabas tried to travel with him a while, then Barnabas just couldn't stand him anymore. And then Mark said, I'll give it a try, and he couldn't stand it anymore. You know, Paul's method was, it's my way or the highway. And I guess those guys said, we're going to take the highway. Bye, Paul. I think that was the thorn in his flesh. His ego got in the way. But finally, at the end of his life, he writes, it is no longer I, ego, it is Christ who lives in me. It took him a whole lifetime to squash that ego and step aside and let Jesus in the driver's seat. And we have to do that. That means that we're giving up a little bit of control in our lives. Now, we're celebrating on the 4th of July independence. And I'm certainly grateful that we are independent. In what I've studied about history in the 18th century, you know, the throne of England was doing some pretty harsh things against the colonies. And so we fought a war of independence, and that's why we celebrate it today. We're often taught to be independent. Be a self-made man. Pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. All that's good, except in our relationship to God. When we say we're independent from God, we're saying, I don't need God. And that's a big mistake. I think that's true spiritual wisdom. Like Paul finally said, finally, I figured it out. I need God. In the Beatitudes, the first Beatitude is, blessed are the poor in spirit. What does that mean? Well, if you're poor in material things, it means you're lacking something. If you're poor in material things, you don't have enough money, you don't have enough food, you don't have a house, you don't have clothes. You're needy in those areas. But to be poor in spirit is to realize I'm a needy person. I need God. And that is not weakness, that is strength. And that's what Paul meant. When I am poor, when I am weak, and when I'm, kind of at the bottom, then I finally realize, maybe I should bring God into the situation. Then I have strength. I mean, when God is on your team, what greater strength can you have than that? So you may have a thorn in your flesh. I think all of us do. All of us have things that irritate us. It could be a physical thing. It could be financial. It could be marital. It could be whatever. All of us have things that bother us. And none of us are going to reach perfection. But let's bring Jesus into that equation. When we realize this thorn in my flesh irritates me, bothers me, upsets me, I need God to help me out. I need God. I need Jesus to carry that cross with me. Jesus gave that invitation. Come to me, all you are burdened, and I will refresh you. So you can be independent from the British throne. You can be independent from lots of things. Don't even try to be independent from God. You will regret that. We are very dependent on God. In God we trust. In God alone do we find true happiness. We need God.